She marched across my lawn like she owned it, heels stabbing into the grass, HOA badge flapping against her chest, and a manila envelope clutched like it was a declaration of war. "This is your final notice," she said, lips pursed so tight they looked stapled. "Remove the flag or face consequences." I looked at her, then at the American flag gently waving in the morning breeze. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just sipped my coffee. "If you think that's the end of it, oh, just wait. And if you're tired of Karens turning neighborhoods into battlegrounds, hit that like button and subscribe. You're going to want to hear how this ends." It started 3 weeks ago, on a calm Saturday morning in Brook Point Reserve, the kind of neighborhood where lawns are always trimmed, mailboxes match, and someone's always watching from behind the blinds. I'd been out on my porch, just like every morning, drinking black coffee and watching the sun edge over the rooftops. The flag was already up, same spot it had been for the past 6 years, mounted on a steel bracket, centered right on the porch post, facing the street. Stars and stripes, clean, no frays, properly lit at night. Regulation perfect. And that's when she showed up. Linda May, newly elected HOA president, self-appointed queen of community standards, and every neighbor's quiet nightmare. She never came with a smile, just rules and attitude. I'd seen her once make a woman cry over a flower pot that was an inch too far left. "Mr. Miller," she said, scanning a clipboard like I was a grocery item, "we've received a complaint about unauthorized decorations." "Flag's not a decoration," I said. "It's still in violation. Section 4.2b, no permanent fixtures on front-facing structures without approval." "That section doesn't apply to national flags," I replied calmly. "Federal law overrides HOA guidelines. Freedom to display the American flag is protected under the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005. She blinked, thrown off for a second, but quickly recovered. "I'm aware of the law, but that doesn't exempt residents from applying for architectural review." "You want me to apply to hang the American flag?" "It's procedure," she said sharply, "and you're out of compliance. You have 7 days to remove it or face penalties." She handed me the envelope and walked away without another word. Inside was an official HOA violation letter, cold language, citations, deadline, a possible fine of $100 per day if I failed to remove the flag. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't quicken. I just folded the letter and placed it under my coffee cup. I'd dealt with worse than Linda May. That afternoon, a few neighbors stopped to say hi, the friendly kind of hi you give when you know something's up but don't want to get involved. I saw them glance at the flag, then quickly look away. One of them, Mark, nice guy, 2 houses down, leaned in as if sharing national secrets. "She's on a tear, man. Went after a guy last week for a garden gnome." "A gnome?" I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, said it was unapproved statuary. You believe that?" I didn't answer. I just smiled and nodded. Next day, my mailbox had another letter, this time a second notice. Same language, same threat. Only now it included a photo, my porch, my flag, time-stamped like I was being surveilled. The weirdest part? The photo was taken from across the street, through hedges. That night, I stood on the porch with my coffee again, just watching the flag. The stars on it had been with me since Iraq. I'd folded and unfolded that flag too many times beside too many brothers. It meant more than cloth and color. It meant promises, sacrifice, home. I didn't touch it, didn't plan to. But Linda May wasn't finished. She came back on Thursday. No clipboard this time, just fury. She marched up like she was about to perform a citizen's arrest. "You think you're above the rules because you're some sort of, what, patriotic decorator?" I didn't speak. "You're making a mockery of this community. That flag is a political statement." I laughed once, low and dry. "It's the American flag," I said. "Exactly," she snapped. "And you're waving it like it gives you special rights." "It gives all of us rights." That made her face twitch. She turned to leave, then stopped halfway down the path and yelled loud enough for the neighborhood to hear. "You'll regret this, Mr. Miller." I watched her go, wind snapping at the hem of her jacket, Clipboard forgotten. By the next morning, a third letter arrived. $500 fine. The war had begun. The $500 fine came printed in bold, red font, like it was bleeding urgency. Final warning, it read. Continued violation will result in legal action and potential lien against property. It was signed by Linda May, of course. Beneath her signature, in loopy cursive, she'd written, "Non-compliance reflects poorly on our neighborhood." I held the paper between my fingers for a while. Didn't tear it, didn't crumple it. Just folded it once, clean and tight, and slid it into the kitchen drawer next to the others. By then, word had spread. Some neighbors crossed the street when passing my house. Others offered stiff nods, but no one spoke up, except for Jake, a 20-something who lived in the rental 2 doors down. College kid, worked at the auto shop on Highway 19, always wore the same oil-stained hoodie. He knocked just after sunset, hands jammed in his pockets. "Hey, Mr. Miller," he said. I heard what happened. About the flag." I nodded. He looked over his shoulder like someone might be watching. "Man, this whole thing's messed up. You're not doing anything wrong." "Appreciate that. She's got people scared. She made old Mrs. Whitaker tear out her rose bushes last month, claimed they were unauthorized landscaping. She's been here 3 decades. "I know," I said. "She told me." Jake hesitated. "Look, I want to help, but I also rent, and my landlord's tight with the board. If I make noise, I'm out. You don't owe me anything, son. Just keep your head down." He gave me a sheepish shrug and walked off into the night. By the end of that week, I noticed something new. A car, silver sedan, tinted windows, parked across from my house for long stretches. Different times of day. No one ever got out. Just sat there, engine idling. I waved once. No response. Another day, I found my garbage bin tipped over, contents spilled. Nothing stolen, just dumped. Deliberate. This was the part no one talked about. How HOAs could weaponize petty bureaucracy. How power in the wrong hands turned a quiet community into a quiet battlefield. But I'd seen power abused before. On desert roads, in concrete rooms with no windows, in the way a man would bark orders behind a desk while others bled carrying them out. This was nothing new. A week later, I got an invitation, HOA community meeting. Open to all residents, discussion of compliance and neighborhood image. The agenda had my name on it, so I went. The community clubhouse was packed. Folding chairs, styrofoam coffee cups, that cheap citrus air freshener trying to mask the mildew in the carpets. Linda stood at the front, flanked by 2 other board members. A balding guy named Ted, who never spoke above a mumble, and Marcia, who wore pearls like armor. Linda opened with a warm smile, fake as the potted ficus next to her. "We appreciate everyone being here tonight," she said, voice syrupy. "Our community thrives when we maintain high standards and mutual respect." Then she pulled out a folder. My folder. "However," she continued, "some residents have chosen to disregard our collective agreements. This is not only disappointing, but dangerous." She held up a photo of my house, zoomed in on the flag. She passed it to the first row. "This is what disrespect looks like," she said. "Non-compliance invites disorder. It invites conflict." Someone in the back coughed awkwardly. A few heads turned. No one spoke. She turned toward me. "Mr. Miller, would you like to explain why you feel entitled to violate the code the rest of us follow?" The room turned. I stood up, slowly, deliberately. "I served 20 years in the Army," I said. 3 tours overseas. I've buried brothers, folded flags over coffins. I came home to this street because I thought I'd finally earned some peace." Murmurs, a few gasps. Jake sat in the back, eyes wide. "The flag on my porch, that flag when isn't for decoration. It's not a political stunt. It's a memory, a promise. And if any of you feel uncomfortable looking at it, I suggest you ask yourself why." Linda's face flushed red. "Mr. Miller, I'm not finished." The room went still. "I didn't ask for permission to serve, and I don't need yours now. I've followed every rule, every code, but I will not apologize for honoring what that flag means. Silence. I sat down. Linda gritted her teeth. Your statement is noted, but this meeting isn't a courtroom. The board will take necessary actions to preserve the integrity of our neighborhood. She adjourned the meeting without discussion. People filed out quietly. Some glanced at me. Most didn't. Jake caught up with me outside. That was badass, he said. I didn't smile. I just told the truth. But truth doesn't always matter to people like Linda May. And that night, I started making a few calls of my own. I didn't sleep much that night. The call I'd made after the meeting had been short. Director, to a man I hadn't spoken to in over a decade, but who still picked up on the second ring. We didn't need many words, just names, dates, a brief summary of the situation. He said he'd handle the rest. By morning, the sun rose over Brook Point Reserve like any other day, but I could feel the shift in the air. Linda May was out early, strutting the sidewalk in her tennis whites, clipboard in hand, inspecting lawns like she was commanding an inspection at West Point. She stopped in front of my house, stared at the flag again, and took a photo. Then two more. She didn't wave. I didn't expect her to. Later that afternoon, a new notice arrived, a formal summons to an emergency board hearing scheduled for Friday evening. This time, the letter accused me of hostile conduct, disruption of community meetings, and, the boldest one yet, inciting unrest. I laughed out loud when I read it. They weren't just trying to find me now. They were trying to isolate me, make me a symbol of disorder, twist the narrative so the flag on my porch wasn't about patriotism. It was about defiance. But they weren't ready for what was coming. Friday arrived like a storm dressed in sunshine. I wore my old dress blues, pressed and polished. Not out of nostalgia, out of precision, discipline. I hadn't worn them since my final ceremony, and the buttons still gleamed like medals. I walked into the hearing room 5 minutes early. The board sat at a long table, looking down like a panel of judges. Linda sat in the center, chin high, face neutral. Ted and Marcia flanked her, eyes darting anywhere but mine. Mr. Miller, Linda began, we've called this special session to address your continued violations and the disruptive nature of your recent behavior. No need for introductions, a voice interrupted from the doorway. All heads turned. Two men stepped into the room. First was Colonel Daniel Rivas, U.S. Army, retired, now working with the Department of Veterans Affairs. The second, Robert Mendoza, legal counsel and federal liaison for Veteran Affairs Enforcement in civilian property disputes. Linda blinked like someone had slapped her. Who are... Colonel Rivas stepped forward. We're here as invited observers and official advocates, pursuant to federal statute. We've reviewed the correspondence, including the fines issued, and the HOA's interpretation of community guidelines as they relate to Mr. Miller's rights as a veteran. He placed a thick folder on the table with a heavy thud. Robert followed. Per the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act and associated federal protections, your actions against Mr. Miller constitute a direct violation of both his rights as a homeowner and as a veteran. Furthermore, there is credible evidence suggesting targeted harassment. You could hear the blood drain from Linda's face. This isn't a government matter, she tried. We're a private association. You're an entity operating within federal jurisdiction, Robert cut in. Your covenants cannot override constitutional rights, and your documented behavior crosses the line into intimidation. Ted cleared his throat. Maybe we should review. Marcia just nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the folder. Colonel Rivas turned to me. Mr. Miller, on behalf of the Department of Veterans Affairs, I want to thank you for your service. We're here today to ensure your rights are respected. We've also prepared an official response to these actions, including a cease and desist notice and a request for formal apology from the HOA board. Linda's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I wasn't trying to... Your intent is irrelevant, Robert said. The room fell into a tense silence. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. When the meeting adjourned, I left first. Walked down the path in full uniform. The clubhouse door creaked open behind me as neighbors spilled out, whispering, watching, unsure of what they'd just witnessed. Jake was standing at the edge of the sidewalk, mouth slightly open. That was, wow. I nodded once. Just did what had to be done. You brought the damn cavalry, Mr. Miller. Sometimes that's what it takes. By sunset, new notices were delivered to every resident's mailbox. A letter of apology, signed by the board. An acknowledgement of overreach. All fines issued to me, revoked. HOA members required to attend a mandatory seminar on veterans' rights and federal law. I sat on my porch that evening, flag lit, coffee in hand. And for the first time in weeks, no one stared. No one looked away either. The next morning, everything felt different. For the first time in weeks, I opened my front door and found no envelope on the mat. No new fines, no threats, just silence. Peaceful, overdue silence. But the neighborhood itself was buzzing. Not loudly, not in the way children laugh or dogs bark, but in quiet conversations at mailbox clusters, in glances exchanged over hedges, in the slow realization that something had shifted permanently. Linda May's power had cracked. By noon, her white SUV was missing from its usual spot in front of the clubhouse. The HOA's official website had quietly removed her photo from the leadership page. No announcement, no formal resignation, just vanished. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Jake showed up later that day with 2 coffees in hand. He didn't say much, just offered one of the cups and sat on the porch beside me. Thought you might want the real kind today, he said. Not the instant stuff. I raised the cup in a quiet toast. He leaned back in the chair, staring out at the flag. They're saying she quit. Didn't have much choice. She'll probably move. Maybe, but she won't forget it. None of them will. I looked over at him. That's not the point. Then what is? I let a breath sit in my chest before releasing it. The point is, I didn't do it to hurt her. I did it because you can't let people get used to silence. That's how folks like her get loud. Jake nodded slowly. So, what happens now? That evening, the HOA called for a new vote, a community-wide election to replace Linda's position. For the first time in years, it would be an open vote, not a quiet shuffle among insiders. Jake's name appeared on the ballot 2 days later. He hadn't told me, but I wasn't surprised. He knocked on my door the night before voting began. I know I'm young, he said, and I don't know everything. But I think it's time someone gives a damn about this place without trying to control it. You've got my vote, I said. He smiled, the nervous kind of smile you only see on people who are about to do something brave. I've got a favor to ask, though, he added. I raised an eyebrow. If I win, I want you to speak at the first meeting. Nothing formal, just let people hear something real for once. I thought about it for a second. Only if we hold the meeting outside, I said. On the lawn. Jake grinned. Deal. The vote wasn't even close. Jake won by a landslide. For every retiree who'd stayed quiet out of fear, for every young family tired of walking on eggshells, Jake became a symbol of change. The first meeting was held the following Sunday, in folding chairs on the clubhouse lawn, under the shade of the same flag that started it all. Jake stood up, thanked everyone, then handed the floor to me. I didn't have a speech prepared. I didn't need one. I'm not going to tell you how to live, I said. That's not my place. But I'll say this. The freedom we all enjoy, the freedom to fly a flag, to speak your mind, to plant a rose bush, didn't come easy, and it sure as hell shouldn't be surrendered easily. People clapped. A few wiped their eyes. After the meeting, neighbors came over one by one. Some shook my hand. Some just said thank you. One man, someone I'd never spoken to before, handed me a small envelope and nodded. Inside was a note written in a child's handwriting. Thank you for being brave. I looked around. A little girl stood near the sidewalk, peeking from behind her mother's leg. She waved shyly. I waved back. That night, as dusk settled over Brook Point Reserve, I sat on the porch one last time. Flag lit behind me, air warm with the scent of cut grass and a promise kept. The war was over. And this time, we'd won. A week passed, then two. The days slipped back into routine. Lawnmowers humming on Saturday mornings, sprinklers clicking in rhythmic cycles, kids racing bikes down sidewalks where silence once ruled. The tension that had gripped Brook Point Reserve for months seemed to evaporate like morning dew. Even the birds sounded louder. But there was a new kind of quiet now. The good kind. Not fear, not suspicion, just the stillness that follows a storm finally spent. Jake stepped into his role as HOA president with more humility than anyone expected. No clipboard, no ultimatums. His first act? He hosted a community coffee on the clubhouse lawn. No agenda, no speeches, just folding chairs, muffins, and open ears. And people came. Old neighbors who hadn't spoken in months. Young couples just moving in. The Whitakers brought homemade lemon squares. Someone brought a guitar. There was laughter, the kind that vibrated from the ribs out. That day, Brook Point felt like a neighborhood again. Jake caught me by the refreshments table, nudging a muffin into my hand. "You started this, you know," he said. "I just stood still." He smiled. "Exactly." By mid-month, the flag on my porch had become something of a landmark. No one spoke of removing it anymore. If anything, more flags appeared. Small garden ones, tasteful banners by the doors. It wasn't performative. It wasn't political. It was quiet unity. One afternoon, I found a small package tucked beneath my doormat. No name, just a clean white box. Inside was a polished wooden stand, carved by hand, with an engraving. "For those who fought for it, freedom has a flavor the protected will never know." I ran my fingers over the words, slow and deliberate. My chest tightened, not from sadness, but from something heavier, gratitude. Then came the day I'll never forget. I was trimming the hedge out front, shears in hand, sweat on my brow, when a school bus pulled up across the street. The brakes hissed, the doors clattered open, and a cluster of kids spilled out like coins from a pocket. One boy broke away and crossed the road toward me. Skinny, maybe 9 or 10, with a backpack bouncing off his shoulders. He stopped a few feet away, nervous. "You Mr. Miller?" I nodded. "My name's Connor. My grandpa was in the army too. My mom said I should say thank you." He handed me something folded. A piece of construction paper, crayon drawn. It was a picture. A flag, a porch, and a stick figure man holding a coffee cup. "I drew it in school," he said. "I hope that's okay." I crouched slowly to meet his eyes. "It's better than okay, Connor. It's perfect." He grinned and ran back to his house. I stood there for a long moment, the drawing in my hand, the flag waving behind me, the sun sliding lower through the clouds like it too had slowed down to watch. A few minutes later, I placed the picture in a frame and hung it on the wall just inside my front door. Right next to my shadow box, medals, photos, and a small patch of desert sand sealed in glass. That night, Jake called. "We're putting together a Veterans Appreciation Dinner next month," he said. "Low-key, community style. Want to be the guest of honor?" "I'd rather be the guy who brings the baked beans," I replied. He laughed. "Fair enough. You're on beans." Before we hung up, he said, "Hey, you think Linda's watching all this?" "Doesn't matter if she is," I said. "She can't stop it now." We were quiet a moment. Then he said, "I'm glad you stayed." So was I. And as I stepped onto the porch once more, coffee in hand, flag catching the wind like a sail on calm waters, I realized something. This place didn't just return to what it was before, it became something better, because someone stood up when it mattered. And this time, nobody sat back down.